the the idea of the idea of is searching for the chametz, right? And so normally we would be searching for the chametz, during the 14th, right? But because the 14th is on Shabbat, right? We don't do it until we do it on the 13th, which is tomorrow, which is Thursday. So I just had to give them some notes now because I'm not going to give them a lecture to 6 p.m. tomorrow. So, God forbid, by the time we finish the lecture, the 13th is going to be over. You know what I mean? And so anyway, so that's like the main one of the main things I wanted to get over to. But just to start off a little bit, did you guys have any questions? Any questions? I know you guys been doing your own research and preparing as well, but I don't know if you had any specific questions.
You're right. I'm not the firstborn, my sister is, but could I fast?
I mean, you could fast, but it wouldn't be the fast of the
It would be
firstborn.
the fast the firstborn. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I know you want that spot,
I
but
do.
yeah, yeah, your sister got it. But okay. Any other questions? Anything? You guys pretty good? Pretty
No, no,
confident?
but Toda for that essay that you sent us, that really cleared up a whole lot because we in that document, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our morning Shabbat meal,
Hmm.
and then we'll have the third meal before noon, but all hummus will be completely gone by 10:30, as Rabbi Chief Rabbi Pincus was saying. And so that paper cleared up a lot
Okay.
about the meals. So soda.
All right. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like it's just such a unique thing that we're learning Pesach together for the first time, and it's like this crazy thing where not crazy, but I think it's an interesting point that whatever day Pesach is on is going to be the same day that the that Tu B'Av. No, wait, not Tu B'Av. Um, the fast. I think the fast and Pesach, the ninth of Av. I think it's the same thing. Anyways, I don't know. It's the whole thing. But if any other questions come up, if you guys want to join in the lecture tomorrow with the Nigerians, it'll be at 6 p.m. I guess my time because I think we're like an hour difference, or whatever. But anyways, it should be interesting. Anyways, okay, so we have that. The thing is, I'm kind of like in a mindset, like a little bit, just to hear, a little bit more of the Rob stuff, because it's just it had a good impact. It had a good vibe, and there's a second part of the lecture, and I start listening to some of it, so we could just kind of like jump in the middle of it. Not, I mean, you got the context already. Nothing really. I mean, he's kind of like bringing people up to speed because this is another day, right? So he's kind of bringing it up to speed. So I wouldn't mind just hearing a little bit, just to keep that energy and just hearing this perspective. Um, what are we holding on? Let me get there. So we keep the vibe going. If it works, you got to keep going. And I'm sure the Rav and Shemaim's getting a lot of nakas from. Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on hold on 1 second. You guys got to see it.
Tell us to do it this way. If you don't ask questions, and I guess
there's a time to look. You have a right to look.
Because that was only to trigger an initial.
Chief Rabbi, you still there?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Cause you couldn't hear the tape? You couldn't hear the audio?
No, we couldn't hear the audio.
Oh wow. Let me figure this out. Hold on. All right, I don't know what happened because it was on a minute ago. All right, so just really quick, so what's being talked about in this context? He's talking about this idea of searching for the chametz, right? Can you guys see the screen now? Can you see the
Okay.
screen? Yeah, you can see it. Okay, cool.
Fine. Yes.
Okay, cool. So he's talking about this idea of searching for the chametz, and he's basically saying, like, it's an interesting idea. You're searching around the house, you're searching. And so he's saying that, but the thing is that the holiday, the laws itself say, like, after you finish searching, you're going to make a blessing that says that any of the chametz that I see or don't see, I don't have any sharing, for these 8 days. So he's saying, so what are we actually searching for? And that's what he's talking about here, is like what the idea of what he's searching for. Okay, sorry about the audio before.
Reconcilable with the kind
You,
of energy we're
you
dealing
can
with.
hear?
That it's going to.
You guys can hear it?
It's attempting to draw in. And so if we're talking about Ein Sof, these are all of the steps that are required to achieve the bi'ur. And then comes the burning. Now, why do we burn it? Why do we burn it? Again, this is all of the thought intelligence that we establish a software within ourselves. If you don't do this, I guess you haven't done it. You haven't accomplished anything. But I've gone through the motions. Well, 2,000 years we've gone through motions. Something must be wrong somewhere. Well, if it's not wrong, but maybe we're lacking something along the way. Maybe we haven't dealt with the internal, because that becomes a little difficult. It's easy to deal with the external aspects. And therefore, the following day comes the bi'ur. The bi'ur comes through burning. And because we know that all material matter represents one concept, the desire to receive for oneself alone. When something is burnt, it becomes ash, and ash has no continuity. Can't grow anything with ash. In other words, ash represents a complete letting go of the physical matter, because there's no continuity. See, if we cook up water and then it becomes condensation, there's still a continuity of the water in another form, but there's continuity of material matter. That's right. And so it can turn back into water again. By burning the hametz, or burning the lamb, which was the same thing, in essence, and it could only be done through burning, not through cooking. By burning, and this is the trip we're supposed to be going through. If we don't go through this trip, then when we come to the stage 2 of establishing the software, which is the Seder itself, the foundation is not there, and you begin on floor 2.
Actually, what comes to me is the restoration of the soul. Am I correct, or
In a word, that would be correct.
is how you restore your neshama?
Well, let's restoring the Shema in essence hasn't really been affected. It's been imprisoned maybe, and we're looking now at the spring
Out. That's right.
spring out that soul from its prison, and that means our own soul being imprisoned. The reason we suffer or we endure pain is because the soul is not permitted to exercise circuitry, because the soul is an inbuilt channel for circuitry. What is the soul? The soul is the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. It's automatic. It's like the trees and everything else that can maintain, energy, atomic energy. So the soul has no problem. It's because it's become confined within the body, which is the essence of the desire to receive for oneself alone. Everything. Yeah. Okay. Right. All right. Now.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right. So we're gonna just we'll continue on in this whole thing, but the key thing is right now we're talking about the burning of the chametz, right? And this concept of the burning of the chametz. First, the idea was just searching for the chametz. Now he's doing with the burning of the chametz, and he's basically showing that like he broke it down into two parts. He calls the first part hardware, and that's why one of the things I've been thinking about with the Rob Bergen blessed memory. One of the things that what makes his concept is very like he's like such a sage for our generation in many ways in terms of someone who's not here, but we can still relate to their teachings, or his teachings are extremely relatable to where we're at now, is because he's taking the Rav Ashlag model that you guys have learned a good part of, at least his introduction to Kabbalah, and we're halfway through the introduction to the Zohar, but he's bringing that school of thought and all of his other teachings, and he's communicating it in tangible language, right? At least for in the 90s per se, right? And that's one of the things that I always that really was ingrained to me when I was at the Kabbalah Center all those years with the Rav, was that, a teacher is able to explain things in a most simplistic way, right? That you could just talk to anybody about the greatest concepts ever. So he started off with this concept called the hardware, and the hardware is like the planet, the stars, the universe, the whole the stage setting, right? The setting for the stage for all this massive light to enter this world, right? And so now he's bringing us the software, right? Like, what is the software? The software is the program that you plug in to the hardware, and then from there, the whole thing comes to life. So he's showing us this frame. He's referring to it as software. It's genius. It's very genius. We would probably use app now, right? Maybe not software. You downloading. Here's the app you download, right? Anyways, all right. So we'll continue on. Hold on. Yeah, but this is like really high level stuff, and it's amazing. And he's just like he has so much love. He wants us to know. You know what I mean? He really wants us to know. All right.
As we discuss in the 10 Luminous Emanations, volume number 2, this is where I guess this is what happened. We know this is the paradox. We know from one point of view, if we don't do the bidika, the searching with pieces of bread, if we don't do the burning of these pieces of bread, something is lost along the way. Because, as in our own experience, nothing becomes revealed provided it becomes enclosed within material matter. At the same time, let's not forget that material matter is only an illusion. It is only an illusion. Why is it an illusion? Because it really only represents 1/10 of 1%. So how much of a force is it? But that 1/10 of 1% seems to be sufficient to express the reality, which is the internal. The same way here. We're dealing with bread. We're dealing with burning. Why can't we go through just thought trips? My heart's in the right place. Why isn't that enough? I think to give charity. My heart's in the right place. I want to help my friend. My heart's in the right place. Why do we physically have to go through the steps.
The completion.
Because unfortunately, or fortunately, this is what we have to deal with. The physical reality creates revelation, but let's not understand that the physical reality is the essence. The scientist told you that the table, the force of a table, the force of a chair that prevents something from going through it is not the physical material matter, but rather the internal 99.9% called the unseen atoms. So we have to create a balance between ourselves.
Show the desire from the side of the vessel. So this is what manifested in the endless for. This is the desire, He makes this.
That there must be that there must be a vessel. Now, unfortunately, in the world of action where we are, this vessel is not like the vessel of the Ein Sof. This is a vessel that has no affinity. No affinity with the force, with the awe, with the light. But, so as to create an illusion, we create the table. Who created the table? We. Who creates anything? We. This is the illusionary process that was necessary, that we've discussed in the in 10 Lumen Examinations number 2. Okay? Now, we'll go to page Kuf Mem Daled. No, we just read that. Okay. Now we come to the Ke'ara. The Ke'ara is that which, setting up the software. Because we're going to make use of this Ke'ara to make the connection. All that we've discussed until this point is that I am ready. If I'm not ready, and if my head is not there, and I haven't brought my head together, what I have on the table, which is going to be a physical representation of my head trip, and we'll shortly see how. So this is not a game, or this is not religion, it's not tradition. What all the other names we attribute to the Pesach Seder is not what maybe we've been accustomed to treating what goes on the night of Pesach. If we are now in tune by our thought intelligence, which is 99% of us, we now have to physically express this software that we have established within ourselves through the bidika, through the bi'ur. And now we come to the physical expression of this internalization of ourselves. And we follow the principles of the Ari, because there are two kinds of Ke'ara. The Seder plate, in Hebrew it's called Ke'ara. Incidentally, Ke'ara is Kuf Ayin Resh Hey, and that is 375. Is that right? The reason, again, in Hebrew it's 375, because with the 10 Sfirot, if we can establish the 10 Sfirot of the clean column, or what we say the system by which the force can flow, we then control the 365. So the name of Ke'ara was established again to indicate what are we really talking about. We're talking about 365 days. This one night will control 365 days.
375 controls.
The 10 will control the 365 days. All right. Now we follow the software of the Ari. There are two systems in setting up this software. One is the Ari, and the other one was the Gaon of Wilna. And ours is with six manifestations on that plate, obviously representing the 6 Sfirot. And you have the triad. You have the triad, the Magen David, which is essentially the tool that we make use of in tapping this kind of energy, in tapping a hard disk, is the Magen David, and therefore there are 6. On the upper triad, we have 3, which consists of the right is the something that will portray and represent the Paschal lamb, the Seh. And so the tradition is, when I say tradition, I mean, again, some take a neck of an animal or some part of an animal, the neck, basically, and shortly we'll understand why the neck. We take the neck and we burn that. We burn that. And we put that down on the plate. Okay. Now, I don't know how to stress this often enough that we never forget that from a Kabbalistic point of view, and from a physics point of view, and it's so beautiful today, that when most Jews conform to this tradition and burn the neck and put it down on the plate, I mean, it's a neck. So now, before it was a plain neck, an unburned, and now it's a burnt neck. Like, so what? So what? And therefore, when, from a Kabbalistic point of view and from a physics point of view, nothing exists there until what? You decide that it is there. In other words, they're even telling us the chair does not exist until you have decided the chair is there. Okay? And we agree with that. This represents a channel for right column energy, because in the atom you have 3. So no matter what, in any energy system, you're going to have to somehow bring 3 different forces together. The reason this is on the right side, and it's called the Zroa,
Upper right.
what's that?
Upper right.
Upper right, is because it represents Hesed. Why does it represent Hesed? Because Hesed is in essence a vessel that does not have any desire to receive. That was what Bina attempted to do. Remove the aspect of a desire to receive. When the Jew burnt the ram, what was he doing? He was nullifying, canceling out, producing it not into ash, but the aspect of burning. When they were burning, this is what the Jew was thinking of at that time. He was canceling out that negative aspect of the ram. You don't have to destroy the ram. They ate the ram. They ate the Seh. Why did they burn it completely? Get rid of it. Because that
The audio went out. We'll see if it comes back.
was physically expressed by burning it. And so they canceled out the aspect of negativity. So when we establish that Zroa, the neck, we take a piece of neck. And the reason we take a piece of neck is, in Hebrew, Egypt is called Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim. Because the neck is the narrowest part of the body, right? It comes from Tzah. The word Mitzrayim comes from Meitzah, narrow. And this narrow part, you see, the reason the neck is narrow is because the total energy intelligence of an individual is obviously in the upper part, the head. When everything begins to evolve, become more dense, become more manifested, there is a lessening of that of that energy. It's the same way as when I have a thought and then I express that thought. Obviously, the words now have limited the full extent of what the thought was.
Cut off the intelligence, the thing that directs everything.
That's right. Well, you kind of squeezing it, right? Therefore, we use the neck because that neck was indicative of what the Egyptians were doing to the force, squeezing it out that it should become manifest rather than the negative part, because the force, the light, is positivity, the aspect of sharing. And so they squeezed it out. So when we burn that, we're burning that aspect, that physical material that was representing the squeezing out or limiting force of the ram, the neck. Let me say neck, and that's why it was called Egypt. Mitzrayim, Meitzar, that was their power to reduce the capacity of the brain. That's what cults say. Give me your brain, right? That's all they want. Give me your brain is the expression. I want to take over your brain. Taking over your brain, well, nothing else. What they've done here is limited the effect of positivity, and that's why we use the neck, just to explain why we use that. And this is, so when we put that piece of neck down, that burnt piece of neck down, this is the thought that we must establish. By thinking so, you have thus established that part of the system for you. Then we go to the left column, which is an egg. You take an egg.
Some people use shank bones.
What's that?
Some people use shank bones instead of the neck.
Yes.
Yes. All right. But the important aspect, because it's also called Zeroah. I really want to get, finish to a certain part. We can stay on that too a long time. But as long as we've done what we've done now, that would be sufficient. The aspect of burning it, knowing what we're doing by that. We're setting up a positive, the proton.
On a direct fire? Or like
Direct fire. In essence, which we'll come to shortly when we deal with the matzot, every atom consists of three forces. What's going to dominate what depends on man's thinking intelligence. Does the mind control matter? We believe it does. But we haven't got scientific instruments to detect what the mind and how the mind is affecting material matter. But from a Kabbalistic point of view, we do affect. So when we have canceled out what in effect we're saying, but it's still in essence, it remained. That's why the commandment was not to burn completely the ram so it was not edible. Everything remained, except the thought intelligence of burning that the Jew had at that time, and physically expressing that burning, was in essence taking like the proton. You are now going to be the dominant force in this part of the system. So we establish positive energy as the dominant force over the other two, the neutron and the electron. Okay? Is that clear? I don't want to dwell on it. I don't want to go further, all right? Now we take an egg. Again, conventional ideas are the egg symbolizes, so what? But it symbolizes, the Jew. The more you beat it, the more you cook it, and the hotter it gets. But obviously, we're talking about instruments. But in Aramaic, the word for beitzah, egg, is be'ah, which means desire. So by cooking that egg, why does it get hot? Sure, it gets hot. Nobody asks, how come it does get hot? How come everything in this universe, the more it's subjected to fire, the softer it gets, right? Cook rice, beans, they become soft. Vegetables become soft. And here it's the opposite. Why don't you ask? Why is it up? Well, rather than, so because of the lack of understanding, when the Ari says it's be'ah, meaning that it has a quality of a preponderance or domination of the left column of desire to receive. And so when you cook that egg, the reason it gets hard, because you're intensifying the desire to receive. And we know that's what Pharaoh was doing. He intensified the desire to receive. That was the aspect of pyramids. Material matter. That's how he could do what with a body? Normally, naturally, after a person dies, that body should disintegrate. What did he do? Normally, when you cook the egg, it should nimas. It should become soft, right? Not become firm. What did the Egyptian do? He knew the art of how to preserve, maintain. That's what's happening with the egg. It continues to maintain itself. The more it's cooked, that was only to indicate to us the potential energy of an egg. And it should be boiled. Why shouldn't it be? Because in a soft state, we do not see that physical manifestation of what we understand is the thought intelligence of that egg. So therefore, we establish that as givura. In other words, this is what you say. This is the sfirat of chesed, the burnt neck or whatever, and the egg is the sfira of gvura, that bottled up energy of left column, the bottled up energy of negativity. You've got to do this. You don't do this, and you're just doing the tradition of making the ke'ara. Where's your system? Where's your system? You mean, but I've done it. Well, so we have telephones and don't talk. So what? So what? Dial, don't talk. You've got to project and inject, arouse its energy intelligence. I mean, the telephone wires are there in a potential steady state. But if I do not activate it by my thought first, and then speaking, which follows, nothing has gone across. Nothing has been activated. All right.
Is that in the upper left part of the plate?
What's that? That's the upper left part. Right.
We just boil it.
What's that?
We just boil it.
Boiled egg.
Because so many people I have seen, they roast the
scramble.
Oh, well, I guess by roasting it becomes hard too. Yeah, that would be good.
Boil or roast.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
That doesn't make it. The important is that it's a hard egg. But the reason why it's a hard egg and it gets harder is for the reason we just explained. Okay? Let's see where. I think we are now going to go to the reason we want to read this. We're going now to Kuf Samach Gimel. That's 163 in the Shara Kavanot. Steadily, if you can read any part, whether you understand or you do not understand, you must always remember that intelligence, Bina, came and followed Chachma. So the fact that you, the 5% of you, do not understand, but don't think for a moment that your 99% internal intelligence doesn't understand what you're reading. Or you know what you're reading.
Yesterday I was reading it for many hours, and I knew that I didn't understand most of those hours.
But it was beautiful.
1 or 2 points that just...
It wasn't the one. The 1 or 2 points was the consciousnly that appreciated it.
Wasn't the points
But the 99% got it.
What is the difference between the upper part and the lower part? Yafasha.
What?
You have the upper
that's
part.
an explanation. It's
This is the explanation.
where points where he felt that it was a little more difficult.
But like the next page, you got more of the explanation. Okay. But are we reading the explanation when we read it, or we read the actual?
The actual text. Okay, we have now here. Now we come to Tiferet, which is the point, the third in the middle, a little lower, like in the Magen David.
The bottom.
And there, no, not the bottom, below the first two, because we're going to have 6. We're going to have 2 triads, right here in the middle. There we have the maror. Maror, the bitter herb. That's root. Why do we take maror? What does that represent? First of all, the least you can do, whether you understand the total meditative comprehension of any of these parts of the software, don't become disillusioned or frustrated. Look, there's so much. How come? All I know is the top. But at least if you say this maror is Tiferet, that thought intelligence of Tiferet, meaning the neutron, now becomes established. Now, the more you know, the greater the connections, the greater the revelation of things. True. But at least your software now has become a working system for you. But just by putting down the maror, not knowing what it is, and not even knowing what it represents, then what have you done? All right? Ve'inyan hamaror b'gematria mavet. The maror, the bitter herbs, is numerically the value of mavet, which means death. Now, another aspect of Kabbalah is numerology, but numerology is no different than formulas and equations in physics. They use numbers. What's the language of physics?
Numbers.
Mathematics. You see, but if you call it gematria, that stay away from that. But one day we'll tell the physicist also, Asur, he's not permitted to deal with numbers. How do you operate a business without numbers? I don't know yet, but I guess over there you're allowed. Anyway, numerically it adds up to mavet. V'hu b'chinat hadinim hakashim. Now, if you ever tasted the raw when it's just been grated, have you eaten that maror? It's pretty bitter. But not only is it bitter, and of course, if you have to take even the quantity, and quantity obviously deals with greater revelation and lesser revelation, but there has to be a kazayit, size of an egg, an olive, but say the size of an egg. I mean, you can pass out. You can pass out. Take my word for it. You can pass out. But in any event, why can you pass out? I mean, why is it that way? The reason is because the Ari says it's b'chinat hadinim akashim. What is dinim kashim? Dinim kashim is electric current coming into a bulb, and the filament doesn't work. It blows. Why? You have live energy, and the vessel can't handle it. A stillborn, in fact, of a child is the same concept. The soul that was destined to come into this body, the body couldn't handle it. It's like, the electric chair, in effect, is the same concept. The body can't handle the intensity of the volume of electric current entering the body. This sudden surge. The maror, the internal components of the maror represents that aspect of mavet. It can bring one to death, like the electric chair. It can bring one to death. Well,
Are we to when we eat that, we're supposed to eat that undiluted, though, right? Because so many people use.
We're going to come right. We're going to come right to it. Now, a question that again, this is knowledge. We've got to go through this. If you don't know these reasons, you can establish at least at its very minimum the maror is tiferet, central column. But the moment you hear central column with death, I mean, we've been studying now for the past half a year is, wait a second, central column is what creates circuitry. There's no blowing out, no short circuitness when you have the central column. Right? So how do we reconcile the maror as tiferet, as central column? In other words, as if the maror now will make contact. As if the maror will make contact. And so the Ari, and only the Ari that I've seen, presents this kind of concept. שצריך לתכנן ולעשן בשיניים כדי למתק המרירות שבהם. In other words, and this is halacha too, when you partake of the maror, this is, superficially the halacha, you just can't swallow it. You can put it into your mouth and gulp it down, right? The Ari says the halacha says you can't do it that way. You've got to chew it. Get the real effect of it. Pass out, but get the real effect of it, right? Why? Why? But this is why? Because again, we're setting up software here. Because when you reach that state, which this maror is going to assist us in connection, the only time you can create a vaccine is by using the live virus. Does anyone know why you must use live virus to create a vaccine? But that's the way a vaccine operates, right? You must take, in central column, you've learned what's central column? The negation of what I want. Is that right? What's restriction? Not that I don't want, as we've discussed many a time. I do want, but I'm going to restrict. I do want, but I'm going to restrict. Here, we're going to make every attempt to create a similarity between me and what happened on Pesach. What happened on Pesach? There was a total canceling out of the desire to receive for oneself alone. Now, if we were to pass out with eating the maror, in effect, there would be death. Death of what? Death of the desire to receive for oneself alone. So, to create a similarity, and this is the epitome of central column, it's when I say I need a piece of bread now or not, I'll die. And then we learn in Kabbalah, at that moment, you have to say what?
No.
Nope. The paradox of the universe. Everything is paradox. So that's not, we have to achieve paradox. So here we're sitting down at this table to tap energy, and along comes the maror and says, stop dead. The paradox. I mean, here.
All right, let's stop here at Ma'or, and we could finish it tomorrow. But I do want to, save a little bit of time and go into to finish off the Haggadah. But before we go forward, whatever thoughts, reflections, whatever. This is like massive level stuff was just brought down, right?
Yes, shalom. This is just awesome. I mean, I can really see clear the the Seder. I mean, it's just so very clear. The portions that we have covered, I'm like, wow. When he spoke about the moar, the bitter herb, I literally was flashback to an experience that I had um, when I was like right out of high school. Went to a restaurant with some friends, and there was horseradish that was presented, and I literally could not finish the rest of the meal. The whole thing was disrupted. The whole engagement was disrupted. And it's like listening to the understanding that this is something that is like alive, like it has a force that you weren't ready to receive. It makes me think about that experience, because I don't think that I've ever like had uh just like graded up before since that time. But wow, maybe I should revisit it again, or just try to most time we use parsley and the romaine lettuce, but it's just making me think about that experience. And then also with the egg, that's really good, how even under so much pressure and the heat and everything, how we as Jews, we continue to just prevail and get harder. And so, well, anyways, that's it. I have little ones who are talking, so but that's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Any other statements on this? Before I want to respond.
No, it
So
was
yeah,
very
just
clear.
go ahead,
It was
go
very,
ahead.
very clear, very, very clear, very, very. Just a lot of insight. You approach the Seder in a different manner. Toda.
So yeah, so that's what we're going to. This is the Seder we're talking about. This isn't about religiosity. This is about the spiritual essence that was given to us on Mount Sinai, right? And in the system of spirituality, and that's why when we talk to people who don't necessarily understand where we're coming from, for some people they it's a holiday. It's a culmination. It's a revival. It's a tradition. For us, this is all spiritual. Every aspect of the Seder is an expression of our soul, is an expression of the mitzvot that are in the Torah. The mitzvot in the Torah are a reflection of our soul. The soul is reflection of the system of creation itself. It's all binded together. This is us, right? This is us. It's not something that we have to go outside of ourselves, but it's something that we do have to awaken. And I think one of the big ideas out of all the amazing ideas, but one of the big ideas to really remember is this idea of the knowing allows us to inject consciousness, intention, right? And just the injection of intention allows us to manifest. That's the key. Is that once we understand that the shank bone is connecting us to Hesed, the second aspect of the egg is connecting us to Gevurah, and now the Maror is connecting us to Tiferet. The Rav said, if you just know that's enough to get in, right? And he says, obviously, the more you know, the deeper you go. There's obviously more and more levels, but the main level for us, right? Because we were learning these things already. Now we're activating this knowledge. Now it's not just Hesed Gevur Tiferet, it's like, a mental exercise, right? No, that's not what this is. These are actually mechanisms that allow us to identify certain aspects of consciousness. And as we identify certain aspects of consciousness, we participate with action with that intention. And then by doing that, we make that connection, right? So we're going to continue on with our Haggadah because we're just in the last three parts. And then so tomorrow, we'll spend a good amount of time tomorrow, like really, thinking about the Rav, but like, we'll take pauses and reflect on different points, right? Because we want to at least get through the full. I think from the Seder, he's going to go. Obviously, he's doing the Seder now, and then so now he's going into the different parts of the actual um, Seder plate itself, right? The different aspects that are on it. So we're up to the point of Ma'or, which is the bitter herbs, but we understand that's the connection to Tiferet, right? And this aspect of the Ma'or and this power that exists within the Ma'or has this ability to, in a way, remove the energy of death, right? And he's going to go into that as we go further in this chapter, and not just like death, like in terms of like COVID or something like that, God forbid, but I'm saying like death, like in terms of relationships, death of trust into a person, a death of a business, or a death of an inspiration, any of these things, you know what I mean? Like these things can all be revived, right? And so that's the resurrection of the dead. It's not just limited to at the final time where our souls will be brought back into reality, but rather the resurrection of the dead is all the different aspects of our life and all the different aspects of our personhood and everything about us, right? So, all right, so let's continue
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
You saying something?
yeah. Just
Go ahead, you're breaking up a little bit.
reflections that I had earlier
Mm.
today. I got a brother that is he's really starting to ask more. I've been knowing him for many, many years. And so me and him, we were discussing Pesach. And can you hear me okay? Yeah.
He said,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. And so we were talking, and so we've been studying together some, and we were reflecting on just the, just the bitter sweetness of Pesach, whereas there really is a melancholy, and we were talking about it from the concept of, here we are, we're getting ready to basically reflect and celebrate freedom, right? And we're remembering freedom. But there's this aspect looking forward to whereas you're moving into a new realm and you're moving into a new uh, year, a new um, sector in your life, and it's unknown, and there's things there's goals that you're being challenged on that you really don't you don't always know what to do, you know, and there is a level of I don't like using the word fear, but when you don't know something, there is a bit of fear there, but there's just this fear of the unknown, basically, in moving forward. So we were talking about it, and we were like, hey, man, when slavery was abolished here in this country, it was a day of rejoicing. Everybody was excited, but then the reality set in to say, hey, we have to build for ourselves. We have to we have to go into this unknown world that we hadn't known. And so that this refinement of this light really helps us with that, and just, like we were talking yesterday, and just knowing that. And I think Otanel brought it up to saying, hey, man, we made it here. We're here, and that's the key that we need to open the door, you know. And so that really gave us a level of a sense of like, wow, man, this is awesome. This is really awesome. So I appreciate the teaching. Toda.
So let's go into let's go into the final parts, final three stages of the hold on, make sure you guys are watching this. Okay. Okay. So we went over we went over this idea of the Seder. So actually, in the point of where the Rav is at with this whole thing is that he's holding by he's at the point of the Seder, right? When we talk about all the different parts of the Seder, I'll be bad, but we don't need to go into that again. Well, okay, and so we went into that already, right? And then so the first part is after the Seder. We're going to go through all the different parts, but we're up to the first three parts or three more. So we start off with this idea of kadash, which is this idea of the kiddush that we make. Then we go to yarkas, which is the idea of the washing of the hands. Then we go into the idea of karpas, which is dipping the vegetable inside of the salted water. And then we have yakas, which is the breaking of the middle matzah and separating the afikomen. And then we have magid, right, which is the reading of the story, right, the recounting of the Exodus, and it has all these very interesting parts inside of it, like different sons, all these things, but it ends with Hallel, and Hallel leads us to Motzi Matzah. And so Motzi Matzah has a few different parts, which is basically the idea of being able to say the bracha on we take the first three matzot. We take the three matzot that we have on our Seder table. The one is, the same one that we broke earlier in half. And what we do is we take all three of them and we say the bracha of Hamotzi. Then what we do is we drop the third matzah, the one all the way at the bottom, and then we only have the half one, and we have the main top one that's full, right? Right, we have two full ones. The bottom one we drop off, so now we only have a half a piece and the top piece, and in there we say al letilak. Sorry. So the first one we say. We say hamotzi, and then the second one we say al mitzvot matzah, right? So that's the first part. The second part is that we take the maor and we dip it in charotzit and we mix it. And he says we take the maor and we dip it in harosis and we bless it over with a blessing over the mitzvahs al netilat ma'or, right? And he says the reason why we don't say hadama is because we said hadama earlier when we said the earlier blessings on the vegetable. Whatever. Anyway, so that's the main thing, right? And then from there we take the two pieces and we put it together, and then we have what they have this kind of like super sandwich, right? The super sandwich is taking the two pieces, and between them, we take two pieces of matzah, and then between it, we take the ma'or that's been dipped in a harosis, and we bring them all together, and we have this super sandwich, right? So that's the mitzvah. So now, so that is motzi mitzvah. I mean motzi matzah. Sorry, motzi matzah. Sorry. And so we do that, right? And so now the next part, which is korach, which is the wrapping of it, right? Which is the wrapping of it. And then now we're on this idea of tafun, tafan. Sorry, tafan. He said, so tafan. What is tafan? At the end of the meal, we eat the other half of the broken matzah, and this symbolizes the Paschal lamb offering, right? So the middle matzah that we break is kind of like we don't roast the lamb, so this is what we have. And so he symbolizes the Paschal offering in which he says in which the temple times was eaten at the end of the meal. He says it should be eaten before midnight. So you got to eat this last part before midnight. It should be eaten before midnight. The tradition has given the name afikomen to this matzah, and it derives from a Mishnah cite in answer to the wise son. Okay, interesting. That we do not conclude anything after the afikomen. Most scholars conjure that the origins of the word is Greek epicum, which means a which meant a drinking party. The Greeks used to often end a festival meal by visiting friends and engaging in a night of drinking and conversation. Plato describes such an event in the Symposium. The sages ruled that such a social activity were forbidden on Pesach, and one should finish the evening with the holy taste with the taste of holy food in one's mouth. Hence, the last part of the matzah became known as the afikomen. I got it. He said, a sign of the difference between the Jewish and the Greek culture, between the holiness and the Herodian, it is not a coincidence that where the Greek culture rapidly disintegrated after days of Alexander the Great, Judaism sustained its spiritual and moral energy through many crises of the history. So it's a very this is very like just the concept of what we're doing right now is important, right? Because we were just learning from Ralph Berg, blessed memory, Yehuda Berg's father, great person, and Michael Berg's father as well. So the point is just saying, so that we were learning from him, and he's bringing a whole perspective on the interconnectivity of the energies and how they manifest through this experience called Pesach. Here we're learning what they would call the Peshat, right? In the Drash around it, right? In the Rimas, like so you have the four levels of the Torah, right? You have Peshat, Drash, Rimas, and Sod, right? Peshat is the basic understanding. Rimas is the aspect of the hints. Drash is like the commentary, the explanations why. And then you have the Sod, which is the aspect of how the inner essence of this all fits in with the cosmos and everything. So we're learning both. So right now we're learning the basic, what this means, what the halakha means, how the structure goes. And then we go to this aspect of Rabberg in this context, but our main mikubal is Chief Rabbi Pinchas, right? And Chief Rabbi Pinchas gave a beautiful share on Pesach, and we're gonna, God willing, we'll see some of that. I think you guys saw it. That's the reason why I haven't played, because I think many of you guys made the share, because I sent you guys a link. But the point is just saying, so Rabbi Pinchas even goes a step further for us because he really connects it to, he brings it on the physical level, like how you see Rob Jonathan Sachs bringing it on the level, bringing different sources and historical events from the perspective of Europe, right? You have the same thing with Rabbi Pinchas by Africa, in Nusak, Afriki, and these things. So it's just important to always have that in mind. He says, Brachad Hamazon, he says, the grace after meal is one of the elements of the Jewish, whatever, already specified in the Bible, right? So the Brachad Hamazon is actually in the Torah, right? And you know what's interesting about Brachad? Oh, I think they're going to say it. Yeah, they're going to say it. All right, fine. All right. He says that it is a commandment in the verse, you shall eat and be satisfied, and you shall be
Shalom,
blessed
Chief
the
Rabbi.
Lord your God
Excuse me.
for. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you please share your screen?
Oh, you don't see it? Oh, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Always remind me of that, because I mean, sometimes it goes out. I don't know. All right. All right, perfect. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so this is the Brachad Mazon, right? So we just finished the last part of the meal, which is the afikomen. The afikomen is the last pizza matzah that we set aside at the end, right? Because the idea is to say that it's kind of like a contrast to the non-Jewish culture, right? When they end it with like crashing out through drinking, basically. And so he's saying over here, when we end our meal, we end it with a holy food, right? So that's the idea, and it's a Mishnah. They get it from the whole thing with the sun. Okay. So now we're at the end of the meal, and now we're doing the final blessing, right? And this is the blessing called Brachad Mazon, and obviously he's connected to Abraham. And basically, like truthfully, like this blessing is the after meal blessing is how Abraham did every day. But I looked down, he's going to talk about it. Okay. He said the commandment, he said, okay, so the verse says in Deuteronomy, he said, you shall eat and be satisfied, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Eating is a biological function. That is why Judaism with its emphasis on um, sanctifying, satisfying the physical, is particularly concerned to turn to the act of eating into the moment of spiritual affirmation. Okay, it is said that Abraham and Sarah drew people into the service of God, in the service of one God, by extending them hospitality. After their guests have eaten, they would turn to them. They would turn to thank their host, and Abraham would reply, "Thank not us, but God, who's provided all food for all of us. How shall he says how shall we thank God?" Says, "Bless the Lord, and who is blessed, and blessed be who gives the bread to give the bread and food to all that lives." So this is the original Birkat Hamazon that Abraham used to say. This is the tradition. The tradition. So the tradition is that Abraham would have people over, and then when at the end of the meal is when he would teach them about God, because the people would thank him or try to do something nice for him. He'd say, "No, we got the person that we have to thank is this person." He said, "This is more than a beautiful tradition. It is the basic theme of Judaism. It is the spiritual physical that we find. It is the physical that we find spiritual. God made the world, therefore it is the world that we find God. It is in the world that we find God. God created the world. We find God in the world." He said, the commentator asked, "Why is it that the grace after meal is a biblical commandment, whereas the grace before meal is only a rabbinical injunction?" He said, the answer is that we thank God when we're hungry is natural. He says, thanking God when we are satisfied is more difficult. He said that it is precisely when we are more likely to forget that we need the reminder. And what we have and what we have is from God, the creator and the sustainer of all. So this on that point, it's a very big point, right? And they said it, but I'll just say it again. When a man is starving, he will beg, he will beg, he will beg God, "God save me, God provide for me, God, God, God." But once a man is satisfied, he's filled to his belly, and he sees that there's tons of food more later, it's easy for him to forget about God, right? It's easy to forget about God, right? When we're struggling and this, how are we gonna? Okay, God. But when we're on top, when we get comfortable, we feel that we can control it. That's when this lowly behavior comes out, right? Selfishness, ego, gaiva, as they say in Hebrew. And so now this Birkat Hamazon, this after blessing, is part of that rectification of that consciousness, right? Which is saying like, no, I need God when I'm satisfied. He said the first three blessings of the Birkat Hamazon originate from, he said the first three blessings, the original form of the grace. He said, so the first full Birkat Hamazon had three. He said it represents um, the three concentrate circles of holiness. Okay. The first blessing is for the whole world. The second blessing is for Israel, and the third blessing is for Jerusalem. Right? So I think they may talk about it, but just so you know, Moses we attribute for the first blessing, right, which is for the world. The second blessing we attribute to Yehoshua ben Nun. He wrote that when they came into the land of Israel. And then King David wrote the third blessing, right, which is over Jerusalem. I think he may say it. He says, in the first, we thank God for sustaining all of humanity. The second, we thank him for the special providence over the land of Israel. And the third, we acknowledge his presence in the holy city of Jerusalem, the one place from which according to the sages, the divine presence was never exiled. The order of the three blessings represent the threefold nature of the Jewish identity. First, we are citizens of the world, descendants of Noah, and heirs to their covenant with God. We are part of the collective project of mankind. Second, we are Jews, faithful to our people, engaged as our ancestors have been since the days of Abraham and Sarah, in the long journey to the land of Israel. Whether we live there or in diaspora, we pray for it and we share its It's crisis and achievements. And third is there's a part of us that belongs to Jerusalem. When the temple was destroyed, said the sages, a fragment of its stones into the hearts of the Jewish people and remained the focus of the people, the imagination, and the home of the future of the redemption. As we say, three blessings, and therefore onward the universe, in journey onward from the universe to a particular element of Jewish identity. Okay, so he's going through the different parts of Book Amazon. I mean, personally, I mean, we could touch on it tomorrow. I don't, you know what I mean? It's the after bracha. Uh, okay, so this is the final part of the Seder. I just want to make sure we didn't like miss anything because these are a lot of this is his commentaries. Hold on, I just want to make sure. Yeah, these are okay. Okay. All right, so he goes to the Book Amazon. I mean, we already did most of it. All right. So all right. So he's just going through the different blessings. He's going into more detail on it. I'm just trying to save a little bit of time. But the fourth blessing is relatively short. His commentary. He says this fourth blessing is the grace. So we learned about the first three blessings, right? You know, Moses, Yehoshua ben Nun, King David. So here's the fourth blessing. The fourth blessing of grace after the meal was added during the period of the Tanaim. In the second century, the Talmud relates the period after the defeat of the Bar Kokhba revolt in Beitar. That's when Rabbi Akiva and them went, and they went to battle and lost. It represents a moment of the Thanksgiving of one of the darkest periods of Jewish history when the Romans gave permission to the Jewish people to bury their dead. And over the time, the grace after meal grew with addition further praises of prayer. Why is he bringing this? All right, poor other nations. Okay, the earliest passage is not part of the earliest Haggadah. All right. All right, so let's go to this last part. So it's like this. Okay, so it's a nitzri, it's a nitz, so it's a nirtza, it's a nirtza. He says, in the Pesach service is finished. This passage concludes the Seder. It's called the nirtza. This passage concludes the praying that we may celebrate it again in the future. Is taking from a literal lyrical. I don't know. Lyrical. I know what I'm saying. Like lyrical poem.
Liturgical.
What is it? How you say it?
Liturgical.
Liturgical. Okay,
Yes,
liturgical.
sir.
All right, washing detergent. All right, so liturgical poem composed by Rabbi Yosef Tov Elam in the 7th century. Originally, it was said in the synagogue of Shabbat on Shabbat Haggadah, which is this Shabbat. Maybe we'll touch on that tomorrow too. The Shabbat precedes Pesach to conclude a detailed of laws, and it was transferred to the Haggadah in the 14th century.
Sorry, Chief Rabbi, the screen is off again.
Okay, God, keep forgetting. Jeez, thank you. Struggling out here, man. All right, but we're back in the game. Okay, so basically he's giving us an insight on this last poem, and everyone says, you know, next year in Yerushalayim. Okay, so there's a few parts to this poem, in essence, right? So this last poem, he said, as a conclusion of Yom Kippur, there's also, he says, he says, at the end of the conclusion of Yom Kippur, so here there are two separate moments of the Jewish New Year's. We pray Lashana Haba, Bir Yushalayim. He says next year in Yushalayim will be rebuilt. Habayit. He says nothing. He says nothing in the He said nothing in the imaginative life of the people throughout the world quite compares to the Jewish love for and attachment to Jerusalem. So at the end of it, everybody says next year Yerushalayim, when Yerushalayim is rebuilt, right? Because even though I'm in Jerusalem right now, it's not the full Yerushalayim until Mashiach is here. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's just a fragment. We're not even in control. We got to listen to America. And he said the Psalms words are unforgettable words, and the feeling of the Jewish exiles in the Babylon. Okay, I'm not trying to stop in the middle of it, but I'm just saying he's just going in, he's explaining it. Okay, and he says it happened after midnight. He talks about this whole thing. He's bringing different stories. He said, "Tell your children this is the time of Pesach." It's different. Like it's like danger. He's finishing everything off. Okay. He says, "Listen to this." He says, so there's another aspect of the poem. He said this poem. There's another poem he ends with. This poem, he says is like the others that follow, has no specific connection to Pesach. It may have been composed by Rabbi Jacob Hazan in London. It appears to be the work of the Etz Chaim, and it may therefore be one of the British contributions to Haggadah. Okay, he's talking about it. Maybe it's there. Maybe it's connected. So these are just like ending invoking points, but the Seder at this point is over. So the kids are passed out, and you guys want to keep going and go through the poems, you can. Some people keep it going. Okay, he says, all right, so here's another thing at the end of Nila. He says, when we end one of Jerusalem's most scarce rituals, the children sing along and sustain. So these are songs that people sing at the end, these types of things. It's like a beautiful time. Okay, so anyways, whatever. We went through it. We went through the Haggadah. There's like, small parts, commentaries on the different poems and things like that at the end of the Haggadah. You can go back into it. But the thing is like this. I think we have a pretty broad understanding. Obviously, there's so many details. There's more details in the Pesach. Where do these things come from? What are the halakha? I mean, like not so much the halakha, but more so like, where did these things originate from? Because the Haggadah in itself is a big mystery. How it started, when it started. And I was thinking about it today. One of the beauties of the Haggadah and this kind of ambiguous creation. I mean, most people accredit different aspects of the Haggadah during the times of the temple, but then more of it developed after the temple over the centuries. But it's that aspect of like not being clear on it, not knowing who the author is, and trying to understand what the authorship and the many different contributors over the centuries are trying to invoke us to understand. What did they see? And I think that's part of the beauty of Haggadah, because that is the essence of the Seder. Right? It's this idea of the miracle of the new becoming, of the new beginning, this coming out, as the Rav says, right? This coming out, which is the spring, right? The coming out. And so that strength that exists in the universe, that is expressed in nature, that energy exists for us as humans. And we have the ability to use that energy to break out. So this is the idea of the Exodus. Exodus is explaining to us this energy that exists during the spring. Any final thoughts, reflections?
Yes, I'm. Oh, go ahead, honey. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm fine. So down.
Yes. Well, I was gonna say that I really I Robert of blessed memory. I really thank the fact that he stated, the your percentage, and I'm not, quoting him exactly, but the percentage of your complete understanding may not be all the way there, but as do, and with the intentions and so forth and go forward, that your soul is going to know, and it's going to all just come together, is what I kind of got from the whole thing. And now with going through this last little portion, and understanding that the Haggadah, we may not understand where it originated or come from, but it really helps with moving forward with those proper intentions and everything, and just kind of giving you like a guide, and knowing that this is a spiritual connection, and that it's not from a religious standpoint or anything like that, but this is just tools that we have in order to help our soul to to just be where it needs to be and to just develop. I'm just so thankful, and Toda, Chief Rabbi, for all of the work that you're putting in to bring these lessons out to us. Shalom.
Amen. Yeah, and we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep pushing it because this is the Torah that we're teaching. From the Rabbanu, this is our focus. We're bringing the authentic sources, the traditions, not like cutting pasting out of the book and trying to teach people. We're just saying, hey, here's the traditions, here's the Masorah. This is what people have been doing for thousands of years. Everything that Rav is saying, he learned from his teachers, and on and on and on and on and on, right? So this is how things are done, right? And obviously, there's always innovations, there's always inspirations, that people contribute in certain areas. So let's continue on this process. If there's any questions that come up, any other halakhic issues, just send me a message, and then we'll figure it out. And yeah, all is good. All is good.
Chief Rabbi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, where were you at in that picture that you sent?
Oh, that was the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I went up there this morning. I've been praying for you guys, praying for everybody. There's a very, very powerful place. That's like, that area. I can send more pictures of me just being there. It's one of my main places now. I've been really focused on for the last couple of years. Is just really connecting to that level, because that's the Temple Mount. That's where Abraham, went to sacrifice Isaac. That's the place where the Garden of where Adam's body was laid out, where God blew a ruach. All that happened on that. That's Mount Moriah, right? That's it, Moriah, right? The Harabayat. That's where I'm at. They built the big dome there, right? But I was just there. It's a very powerful place, and for a long time, Jews, we weren't even allowed to really pray there. But now, recently, over the last year, they're like much more lenient in allowing us to be prayer. It's a whole big story. It's a lot of politics behind it, but it is by far the most powerful place in the country in terms of energy. And I think tomorrow, maybe, depending, I may go and visit Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah and Rebecca, because they're in Hebron, which is like considered the West Bank, by the way, because I know you guys hear about it a lot on the news, but it's in that area, Hebron. So I'm thinking about just going there tomorrow early. We're trying to do both, because I'm just trying to we're just trying to get to that place, right? So, anyways, yeah, so that's where I was at today. God willing, you guys will be coming to Israel at the right time, and we'll be able to have great adventures. Baruch atah Adonai. Otino, go ahead. What are you saying?
I say amen.
Amen. Hey, Otino, you have anything before we go?
I'm just listening, Rav. Working and listening, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Okay. So, yeah. So, Baruch atah Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
Amen.